support financial responsibilities before or during marriage. In Ontario, these agreements are powerful planning tools, and when done correctly, they can reduce conflict, protect businesses or inheritance assets, and provide certainty if the relationship ends. So to those who are attending today, please use the question and answer feature to submit your general comments or questions about the topic. For any specific questions about details relating to your particular family law matter, please contact our team directly. The purpose of this series is to discuss more general information on separation, divorce, and family law matters. So therefore, any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. And please stay tuned until the end, as we will be sharing how you can schedule a free initial consultation with one of our many amazing lawyers. Just to introduce everybody here on the panel today. So I will be hosting this episode, and my name is Jen Spencer. I earned my Juris Doctorate degree from the University of Windsor, where I developed a strong passion for family law, mediation, and litigation. As a 3-time winner of Windsor Law's mediation competition, I am deeply committed to helping families resolve disputes through empathy and collaboration. And during my time at a non-for-profit legal clinic, I gained valuable experience supporting vulnerable populations, which helped me deepen my client-centered approach. And outside of law, I'm an avid equestrian and dedicated volunteer with the Girl Guides of Canada. Now to introduce our amazing panelists. To start with Anna Polito. Anna is a compassionate and strategic family lawyer who takes a client-centered approach to every matter. She helps clients feel supported and empowered while navigating the emotional realities of family law. With strong communication skills and a collaborative mindset, Anna develops a practical, tailored solution that reflects her clients' goals. She is recognized for offering clear and creative guidance in moments of uncertainty, enabling clients to make She is recognized for offering clear, creative guidance in moments of uncertainty, enabling clients to make confident and informed decisions. Anna holds a Master of Law from the University of Law in London and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Sussex, grounding her practice in both advocacy and empathy. Bill, the incredible Bill Rogers, is a managing associate lawyer at our firm. His courtroom experience includes numerous motions and several full-blown trials. And he has also had the privilege of winning a major family law victory at the Ontario Court of Appeal in 2014, which prevented the imposition of a proposed 2-year deadline on property claims by common law spouses. When he's not practicing law, he loves spending time playing music with his band, Soul Custody. And last but certainly not least, Michelle Snook has worked as a family law clerk exclusively since 2014. She joined Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers in September of 2017. As a law clerk, she works closely with clients to draft various correspondence and court documents. Michelle is committed to providing professional and compassionate assistance to clients, ensuring that their needs are met with precision and care throughout their legal process. So to start today's discussion, we are going to start with Michelle, who is going to walk us through what are marriage contracts, prenups, and postnups.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So today we're talking about the fun topic of marriage contracts, which commonly are referred to as prenups and postnups. Generally, or not generally, a marriage contract is a written agreement that's drawn up between two parties, either who are intending to marry or who are already married. It sets out their rights and obligations during the marriage and or in the event of a separation, a divorce, and or a death. These contracts cover things such as how property will be owned or divided, whether spousal support will be paid, how debts will be handled, and what happens to certain assets down the road. So very general cover of, of what a contract is. I'm going to move forward on to why would we consider a marriage contract. A lot of people think a marriage contract is only for the wealthy, which is commonly not the case, and it's not always what deems it appropriate to get a marriage contract. There's many reasons why people might choose to draw one up. And for example, parties may want to protect pre-existing assets, such as homes owned prior to marriage, a business, a family cottage, or a possible future inheritance. Marriage contracts ensure that these assets stay protected. You may also want to do a marriage contract when dealing with spousal support, because contracts can specify whether spousal support will be paid, how much, and for how long. Marriage contracts can also address the management of household expenses and or debts, and help parties have open conversations about finances, responsibilities, for now, and instead of dealing with the arguments later. Basically, a marriage contract is really about clarity. It's about being prepared and protecting both parties' interests. Similar to an insurance policy, you hope you never need it, but you're glad it's there when you do.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Thank you, Michelle. Bill, can you walk us through the key elements commonly addressed in agreements?
Yeah, Jen. Now there's a whole, I can't go through all of them. I'll just go through three of the most common. Um, and probably the big one in Ontario is oop, my public is texting me. Excuse me. Um, a lot of people want to get they want to contract out of this law that we have in Ontario. It's called the matrimonial home law for married people. And it doesn't exist in every province. For example, in Alberta, it doesn't exist, but here it does. And basically, if you get married, um, the house that you're living in becomes what they call a matrimonial home, and there's really no way of not sharing it unless you have a prenup. Um, and it's sort of in a way, it's more fair in some circumstances to do it. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a really, really, really expensive house that you own before you get married. You get married, and that it becomes, even though you still are the sole owner, it becomes a matrimonial home, and you can't avoid dividing it in the event of a divorce. And you also can't get any credit for the value of the home that you brought in. Um, Unlike any other asset, if you bring it into the marriage, the value that it had on date of marriage is off the table, but not a matrimonial home. So, let's say you have a $10 million home and you get married, suddenly, you've got to divide it. So, so a lot of people will have a prenup to get around that. Um, and it's kind of more fair in a way because I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a $10 million home, just like what I said, before you get married, and you get married, it becomes a matrimonial home. You have to share it. But if you have $10 million in the bank and you get married, and then the next day you buy a home with it, um, you're protected because you can get a credit for that $10 million that you had. Um, before the marriage. But again, if it's a home, it's got that special rule. So I think a lot of prenups try to address that issue. Um, if you have someone mentioned a family business, I think Michelle, if you have a family business that's existed for a long time, that's something that you might want to protect, especially because there's other owners, usually other family members who are owners of that business. The last thing you want to see is them embroiled in a divorce fight about how to split it up. So a lot of people will do that. Um, and the third one that's pretty common is spousal support, which they call alimony in the United States. And um, as long as, and I'll say more about this later, but as long as you're not young, poor, and just starting out, you can have a marriage contract about spousal support. And I'll talk about this more later, but if you are young, poor, and just starting out, and you have a marriage contract about spousal support, not a good idea. Do not do it. I'll talk about that later. Um, so that's that topic. Jen, we're gonna go back. Oh, back to you. Over
Thank
to
you
you.
so much. Thank you for the great
And
information.
anything I said makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. No. Okay, I'm leaving this meeting.
Take care, Bill. No, stay for 5 more minutes.
I'm blabbering incoherently.
Well, you're left us on a cliffhanger. What are you gonna talk about next?
Well, I
So let's
think I gave it away.
continue.
I'll talk. I gave it away, but I'll fill that
Let's go
out.
back.
Fill it in a minute.
Let's go back to Michelle. And Michelle, can you talk to us about the legal requirements for validity?
Yeah, for sure. So, number one, the agreement's got to be written. It's got to be signed by both parties, and it's got to be witnessed by an individual who's over the age of 18. That's a big one. I've come across agreements where they have minor witness the agreement as a mistake. Don't do that. Number two, you're going to want to make sure that financial disclosure is exchanged. So that's sworn financial statements and supporting documents. You want to make sure that fulsome disclosure is provided on either side, so you can ensure that all major assets or major debts are disclosed prior to entering into a contract. Um, each party's got to receive or should receive independent legal advice, which ensures that both parties fully understand exactly what they're signing and can confirm whether the parties are under duress or undue influence, which part of the start of this podcast Bill was touching on. It's a big one. You want to make sure that that is not the case. And lastly, you want to make sure that the agreement is fair and consistent with the law, which is something that your lawyer can advise you of.
Great, thank you so much. And now we turn to Anna. Anna, can you speak to how contracts affect property division and support?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've kind of touched on some of these topics already. I think when people think of a marriage contract, they often imagine them as something that only matters when a marriage ends. But the reality is, it's about clarity, knowing in advance how property and finances will be handled if the relationships change, whether that be separation or even death in some cases. In Ontario, when a married couple separates, we have what's called the equalization of net family property. And that means briefly that each spouse keeps what was in their name, but we compare the growth of their assets during the marriage. And the spouse with the higher increase in net worth usually owes the other half the difference. It's a formula designed to ensure that both parties share fairly in what was built during the marriage. And a marriage contract allows for couples to customize that default formula. So, for example, and we've said this before, one person may own a business or a cottage from before marriage, or they want to protect from equalization later on. Or maybe one partner expects a future inheritance that they'd like to remain excluded. The contract can say clearly that this property and any increase in its value will stay separate. And that's legal in Ontario as long as it's fair and properly disclosed. So when it comes to support, there's a bit more of a nuance. You can absolutely agree in advance on how spousal support will be handled, whether it's waived, limited, or set around certain parameters. But child support is different. You can't contract out of it because it's considered the right of a child. It's not the parent's right. So even spousal support clauses can be revisited if enforcing them later would be unfair. So, for instance, if one spouse sacrifices their career to raise children and the agreement left them without a safety net, a court might decide it's no longer reasonable to enforce that waiver. What I like about marriage contracts is that they let couples make informed, intentional decisions instead of waiting until emotions are high and lawyers are negotiating years later. It allows them to sit down calmly and talk through what feels fair. It's not about predicting a breakup, pardon me, but about predicting and protecting what both people would be left uncertain in other situations if they were to separate without an agreement in place. So a key takeaway that I try to give clients and I would give to the audience is you can't avoid the law by ignoring it, but you can plan around it. Ontario gives us a default system, and a marriage contract gives you your own. And if done transparently with full disclosure, independent legal advice, and fairness, it's one of the best tools to avoid conflict down the road.
Great, thank you so much for that, Anna. And now could you speak to some common misconceptions about prenups?
Yeah, and I think everyone else can agree that this could be a segment on its own. There's no limit to what misconceptions there are about prenups or just marriage contracts in general. There's a lot of misunderstanding around them. And we see it in our practice every day. Probably one of the biggest myths is that it's only for the wealthy, which I think Michelle had said earlier too. In reality, they are for anyone who wants to bring some financial clarity into their relationship. And that includes young professionals, blended families, people entering a second marriage. Another misconception is that it's inherently one-sided. The image we get in movies is often someone being forced to sign something right away and rushed, but a properly drafted agreement is balanced, it's transparent, and it's designed to protect both parties. It's not about who wins, it's about avoiding unnecessary fights later. So I think moving with that, a third myth I hear is that prenups mean you don't trust your partner. And I think you could say it actually means the opposite. Couples who talk openly about their finances, their goals, and their expectations before marriage, or in some cases after marriage, tend to have stronger communication in the long term. So the process of making a marriage contract can be a healthy one. You're forced to be honest about money, values, and what security means to each of you. And that shouldn't be seen as a sign of distrust, it's a sign of maturity. Another misconception is that you can sign it quickly and be done. The truth is, if it's done last minute, like right before a wedding, it's much more vulnerable to be challenged later on. Courts will look at if a marriage contract was signed under pressure, whether financial disclosure was completed, and whether both parties had proper advice. So it's not something to rush. I often hear too that you can sign away everything in a contract, including your rights to the matrimonial home. We already talked about that a little bit, but it's just not true. You can agree who owns it, and how to deal with it after separation. But while you're married, each spouse has equal right to possess the matrimonial home, regardless of whose name's on title. That's one area the law is not going to be overriding, or sorry, that the law doesn't let you override. So my message would be, don't believe everything you hear about prenups. They're not cold and pessimistic. They're practical, customizable, and when done properly, they can bring peace of mind to both people. So I think you need to look at it as less of a just in case document and more of a roadmap to transparency within your marriage or the separation of that marriage.
Yeah, that's a great outlook. Thank you so much for that, Anna. Also, we're wondering, when is the best time to draft or update these agreements?
Just on a roll here, I'll keep going. So, the best time to start talking about a marriage contract is well before the wedding. Like we said, it's not something that can be rushed. In an ideal world, we'll start several months in advance. So, there's enough time to exchange financial disclosure, think about the terms carefully, get proper legal advice. Waiting until a week before the wedding is just not only going to be stressful, but it's not going to hold up. It's going to make the contract vulnerable and very easily challenged later on. That being said, though, it's not that there's ever a time where it's too late. If you're already married, you just do a postnup, and which is simply a marriage contract signed after the wedding. The law treats them the same. They're both marriage contracts, same formalities. It just one comes before the marriage and one comes after. So a lot of times, when an existing agreement should be updated, life changes. Maybe you buy a new home, you start a new business, one of you stops working to take care of the children. You may receive inheritance or your financial situation shifts dramatically. Those are all good triggers to revisit an agreement. You can either add to an amending agreement or replace it with a new one, whatever reflects your current circumstances better. A good tool is a review clause. So it can simply say the parties agree to review this agreement every 5 years or upon certain life events. And that makes the process less intimidating because both partners know it's a living document. They're not locking themselves into something that's rigid forever. I'd also remind couples that these conversations don't have to be heavy or negative. You can frame it a part of your overall planning. Michelle, I think you were talking about it like kind of as if, like how you plan for life insurance, the same way you would review life insurance or your will, or just simply financial planning in general. A marriage contract is just one more layer of that protection. So, when to draft or update? The short answer is start early and review often. And the long answer is anytime your financial or your family circumstances change in a meaningful way, think of it as maintaining the health and of your financial relationship. So it's not just signing paperwork and forgetting about it after it's signed. It's something you can revisit when the changes call for it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now we're going to move on to the limitations and enforceability issues of marriage contracts with Bill. Bill, take us away.
Thanks, Jen. And just to pick up on what Anna said, the rule that I follow, it's not, it's a rule of thumb that a lot of lawyers follow, but it's you don't have to, but I do. And that is 3 months minimum before the wedding, the thing is signed and done. 3 months. Um, because as Anna was saying, if you the closer you get to the wedding day, the more vulnerable it is to be challenged and set aside. Um, and they generally will use the concept of duress. You're under duress, pressure, undue pressure to sign. I've seen situations where the wedding's in a week and they've already got the caterer. You know what I mean? The invitations have all gone out. Um, that's duress with a capital D. So what you do there is you say, let's wait till the wedding's done and then we'll do a postnup, which is exactly the same thing, but you want to have the element of duress. So there are lawyers who will do it. I don't think, hopefully no one at this firm would accept money to do a prenup the week before a wedding. I don't know, is it malpractice? It's getting there. So for all the folks out there, don't do it. 3 months minimum. Um, Now, just to fill in a bit more information about what I said earlier, and I think Anna basically covered it too. Spousal support. Now, if you're uh, if you're young and poor and just starting out, you don't have to be poor, but like young and you both have about the same amount of money, let's say, and you're starting out and you're planning on having kids and all that, do not even think about putting a spousal support waiver in there. Just don't do it. You can. Some lawyers will. I won't. And the reason I won't is um, because there's a really good chance that it could be set aside by a court down the road, and with good reason. I mean, let's say you've got these two people starting out, they've got no kids or whatever, then they end up having a family. And let's say one of them it typically would be the mother, but not always, but most of the time, let's say the mother stays home with the kids. And that's considered a career sacrifice in family law. If you stay home with your kids, you're actually sacrificing your own career. Um, and because of that sacrifice, you develop what they call a compensatory entitlement to spousal support. It's to compensate you for sacrificing your career to take care of the kids. It makes sense. So let's say you've got this prenup where you've said no spousal support, and then 20 years later 3 children later, when you've got, one of the parties has stayed home for 15, 20 years and sacrificed their career, then you break up, and then the other person says, well, ha, 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 I don't have to pay you spousal support because we signed this thing 20 years ago. A judge is going to laugh because it's not right. It's not fair. And what they'll do is say, well, I'm not enforcing that. It's ridiculous. I mean, you've got a 15-year sacrifice and a massive spousal support entitlement. You're telling me she's going to get nothing? No way. So that will almost for sure happen. Um, and we're also, once a judge finds one thing to set aside in a prenup, they'll start sniffing around for other stuff, and they'll find something maybe. You don't know what's going to happen. It's a terrible, terrible thing to do. So don't do it. Um, on the other hand, if it's a second marriage, if the parties have children from another relationship, maybe there's a lot of wealth accumulated, maybe a business, that kind of stuff, and they want to say, you know what, we're not going to have spousal support. That's different, and that won't be set aside so easily, if at all. So that's definitely. And it's amazing how many people want. They'll come in and they want a prenup that says no spousal support. They don't want to. They just don't like the idea of paying it. And what I always say is, I don't blame you, but there's no point. It's that you're actually hurting yourself if you put that in there. Do not. If you're just starting out, like I said, do not do it. The other thing that people don't sometimes understand, I think, Anna, you might have mentioned, certainly talked about child support, but any kind of a parenting arrangement in the event of separation, you can't really put that in a prenup. It's not enforceable. You think about it, let's say you have a couple kids and everything's fine, and then dad turns into like a serial killer, let's say, um, and they break up, and he's like, well, we're gonna have joint decision making responsibility and equal parenting time. It's like, well, yeah, but you're a serial killer, man. Like, so no, it's just not like you can't predict what's going to be in the best interest of the children in the future. So I don't think has anyone seen a prenup where they've tried to agree on parenting? I don't think no one even bothers to attempt that. Yeah, you just say no. It's not going to happen. So those are some common limitations, and I have to commend you on your liberal-minded attitude towards these things. Um,
It's
in
just because I haven't
England,
been practicing as long as you have.
no, listen, they're great, and I'll talk about that later, but they can be great. But it's interesting to remember that in England, not that long ago, it was in the last millennium, in the 1990s, uh, they did not recognize prenups, period. You can't do it. So that's the backdrop. Like, it's not the most romantic thing to do prior to a marriage, you know what I mean? Like, hey, honey, I want to make sure you don't take my stuff. It's like, come on. Not the most romantic thing you can do, but I'll talk more about the upside of it. And Anna, your attitude is a good one, not mine. Um, and oh, I think that's it for that topic, Jen.
Well, thank
Jen,
you,
I
Bill.
didn't know you won all those awards.
Yeah, I'm very accomplished. What can I say?
I don't, you know what? I can't believe that's awesome.
Yeah, and this is just my office, so you should see like the rest of the
That
house.
is not your office. That's a backdrop.
No, what are you talking about? This is a six-bedroom mansion and not a one-bedroom apartment. Well, thank you for the
I'm
history
very
lesson.
privileged to be on the same Zoom with you.
Yeah, you really are. Well, thank you so much for the history lesson. For everyone watching, Bill was there for the invention of family law, so he's seen it all. Um, so moving to Anna, can you please speak to the role of independent legal advice?
Yes, I can. I will try to, turn this a little bit more positive, get back to the joys of marriage contracts. What I will say about independent legal advice is I can't stress enough how important it is to have independent legal advice when it comes to these agreements. Technically, it's not mandatory, but in practice, if both parties don't have their own lawyers, the agreement is on shaky grounds. And I think, Bill, you kind of already touched that. it's already on shaky grounds as it is, right? There's certain things you can and cannot have in these marriage contracts. So it's very important that you show you've gone to separate lawyers and you got independent legal advice. So that means each person meets separately with their own lawyer who reviews the contract, explains the consequences, and confirms that they understand what they're signing. So it's not just a formality. It shows the court that the agreement was made informed and voluntary. So if when I meet with a client at this step, you don't just skim through the contract. You go through what Ontario law would give them by default, what rights they're waiving or changing, and what it could mean in terms of the real numbers, if there's financial disclosure, which there should be. I also make sure that they've received full financial disclosure from the other party, because that's key. So without the disclosure, the advice is quite meaningless. If a lawyer sees something that's unclear or unfair, we'll suggest revisions, or write a short memo confirming that the client understands this risk. So that protects the client and it also protects the agreement itself. Courts look for evidence that each person truly understood the deal that they were making. Sometimes clients ask if they can save money by using one lawyer for both of them. That's a hard no. Even with the best intentions, it's a conflict of interest. One lawyer can't advise both sides fairly. The goal isn't about making it adversarial, it's about to make it balanced and defensible. So if people say, why bother with two lawyers if we already agree on everything? The answer is because this is the step that makes the agreement worth more than the paper it's printed on. The independent legal advice is what gives your contract strength, clarity, and hopefully longevity.
Great. Thank you so much. And then we'll finish with Bill, and he's going to speak now to how to start the conversation with your partner.
Yeah, before I do so, I'd like to mention that there was a recent Supreme Court of Canada decision upholding the validity of a kitchen table agreement. No lawyers whatsoever. They said it's fine. The reason it was fine is because it was legally correct. And so you don't need a lawyer if you think what you're going to do is legally correct and you're willing to take that chance. It could work. Um, I wouldn't do it. Believe me, I wouldn't. But it is possible. But it's like, it's the luck of the draw. And everyone, by the way, who tries to set aside a contract, they always say, well, I didn't understand it. Like, and well, you had a lawyer. Yeah, but I don't know. I just was having an off day. Um, it's it's quite something. Um, so I'm not saying don't hire, like I'm not really doing a very good sales job for this firm, saying you don't need a lawyer. You do. I'm just saying that there was that one time where went all the way to the Supreme Court and they said, yeah, it's cool, but if it hadn't been correct, they would have tossed it immediately. So get a lawyer. Do yourself a favor. Um, how to start a conversation with your partner about a prenup. Honey, I love you, but I just don't want to give you any money ever. That's usually the first sentence. Um, and you go from there. What I always say is, and you said this earlier, Anna, different words. The prenup collects dust. That is what it does. So don't worry about it. Easy to say, but it actually that's what a prenup will do. Because guess what? You're not going to break up. You love each other. Prenup's going to collect dust, but it's also going to relieve the stress that could exist if you didn't have it. It makes people more relaxed, more able to participate fully in the relationship, and so that's kind of the way I look at it. Like, yeah, it's not it's a weird thing to do, but it's never gonna be used. and of course sometimes they are, but the idea is anything that makes you and or your partner more comfortable with this is good, and it's going to be good for the relationship. So um, that's usually how I will start the conversation. And maybe a story about your ex, if you have one, and how awful that was. That's always a good thing to throw in.
Round it out.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, how you had to go to jail for 6 months for not paying child support. That's a good one. Um,
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bill. I'm going to turn over to our comment section. We have some questions from our viewers. So, one question, as a first year mature law student, how would you recommend learning the ins and outs of marriage contracts? Is it a mainly fringe practice or is it becoming more mainstream?
I could start off.
Sure.
I will say I'll give the end, as a first year law student, one day to be a lawyer, you'll get used to saying it depends. And that's how it is with the cost, right? It depends on, how complicated the financial disclosure is, what assets the couple has, and what the agreement is looking to accomplish. So there's not really a way to give you an estimated cost on what the agreement could be. A lawyer can provide you with that, once we sit down and actually look at what the situation is and what you're looking to achieve. But as a general term, I would say it depends, unfortunately. And in terms of, is it like typical, do we see it in our practice? I see marriage contracts all the time. I would be interested to see what's the percentage of people who actually end up using those marriage contracts one day, if there is a separation, because I mean, I think I spoke a little bit about how it should be reframed as something that is a part of a healthy relationship with open communication. So it is a contract that you hope to make and never use one day. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily becoming more popular, but I would say it's a part of my practice, definitely.
I actually think I heard something like a lot of organizations say somewhere that couples who do have marriage contracts are more likely to stay together. So I think that's
Oh,
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. And
it
then
takes the stress off.
Yeah.
And can I just pipe in? Can I say something?
sure.
Um, if you want to be a family lawyer, I mean, when I became a lawyer, I thought it would be giving whispered advice in oak paneled boardrooms. Um, Boy, was I wrong. Um, it's a great part of the practice, but I don't know anyone who just does that, like contracts. Um, you're probably going to have to do some litigation, court work, certainly when you're starting out. And the good news is, um, court work is the most fun. Well, not for the client, um, but for the lawyer, it's good. So,
Okay, well, our last question is there any white paper that will be circulated after the episode? To that, it depends. Sometimes the speakers will have something that will get sent out afterwards, sometimes not. So there will be a follow-up email to sort of just, like follow up on like the seminar here, and then any materials will be included in that.
and if anyone wants to comment or complain about this presentation, my name is Russell Alexander. It just says Bill Rogers there because it's a misprint.
Yeah, we got to talk to somebody about that in IT. Okay, so is there any final comments? No? Okay, well, so then thank you for everyone who has tuned into our Family Law Now After Hours. After the session, a brief survey will appear, which will allow you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics that you'd like us to explore. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. So to take advantage of our complimentary consultations, you can book yours now to take advantage of this opportunity. Please contact our intake team at intake@russellalexander.com and mention our after hours series to schedule your appointment. Registration is also now open for our next event, which is how to protect yourself financially during divorce. And you can sign up for that also on our website at russellalexander.com/family law now. And again, thank you to our amazing panelists for their insight today. And thank you for tuning in to the Family Law Now After Hours. And that concludes today's presentation. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Everyone.